What was the worst time you walked in on someone? One time I, then a teenage girl, walked in on my father masturbating to pee. I could tell from the dialogue was pee that I had masturbated to several hours earlier. I didn't see anything other than dad throw the bedsheets over himself and look incredibly sheepish. That day I learned we both like lesbian pee. However, we have not bonded over this incident. But who doesn't like lesbian pee? About 6 years ago when I was in high school, I walked out of my room to see my father putting a temporary tattoo of a spider on my mom's butt. We made very brief eye contact before I did a U-turn back into my room. Parents are weird, man. Parents are people, man. And so is Soylent Green. I was living with my grandparents when I was about 19 years old, and I came home early one day from work. I walked into the bathroom and saw my grandfather, who was like 80 at the time, but naked, staring at himself in the mirror. He was smiling and shaking around his schlong. After we both made eye contact, we both said "oh crap" and just turned around. I'll never forget that image in my head as long as I live. That's 100% something every man has done when alone with a mirror. When I was 8, I walked in on my dad banging my mom's best friend in my bed. She was babysitting and he was supposed to be at work. They were loud, and I went to see what the noise was. My dad screamed at me to go away, so I got out of there without actually seeing them. I told my mom when she got home, and she ended up spending the night in jail for breaking her best friend's nose. When she got home, she beat the crap out of my dad with a baseball bat. Wasn't the first or last time he cheated on her either. I got an awesome new Princess Jasmine bedding set out of it though. When I was 14, I went over to my grandmother's house and came bounding in like normal. To my surprise, she was sitting on the phone, completely naked. She screamed. I screamed. I quickly turned and exited the house. She called me later that day. "I hope you don't think that all women are saggy and old like me. Please don't turn gay." If only you listened to her. I lived in a 2-bedroom apartment with 4 guys, so it was 2 guys per room. I usually left first because of my job. One day, I realized I had forgotten some important documents and came back to get them. I opened up the door to my room and found my roommate laying naked on his bed, his legs up in the air, and blow drying his balls. He later explained to me that he had some sort of jock itch and needed to keep that area moisture free. That image is burned into my brain to this day, and on his birthday, every year, I send him a picture of a blow dryer. Easily walking in on my buddy when I was like 14 and seeing that his dong was way bigger than mine. 0.5 seconds of looking at your buddy's dong can really make a kid question their sanity. So I'm out tent camping at a state park. It's early morning, maybe 6ish. I need the restrooms down the path. I grab my shaving kit, start walking the 500 yards. About halfway, I hear a noise, and look to my left. Directly into the eyes of dude hammering away at his girl doggy style inside their tent, with the door open. I pause, kinda shocked. Dude waves at me. I wave back. Girl looks up. She waves. I wave back. They continue freaking. I continue walking. Walked into my girlfriend's place unannounced. Found a guy balls deep in her butt in the living room. That was the day she went from girlfriend to ex real fast. If she wanted anal, she could have just asked. I said. I, 25F, was being too rady around a house I was planning to rent a room in from Craigslist by the owner. The last bedroom door was closed, so he knocked and opened the door to reveal a husky man with headphones on aggressively jerking off. I still rented the room. Must have been some dong. I didn't personally walk in, but my mom did. I was told to stay outside. I was about 15 and me and my best friend, along with my mom, went shopping and we came home to see my brother's girlfriend's car parked in our driveway. So me and my friend were all like, "Oh, you know what they're doing," and my mom was brushing us off. She told us to wait outside and we went into the house and quickly came out covering her eyes, repeating, "I saw nothing." She caught my brother and his girlfriend mid-act in the living room. My mom was mortified and me and my friend were thrilled we were right. My mom was mortified and me and my friend were thrilled we were right. LOL. Thrilled. I just imagine you guys high-fiving and pulling it down while your mom is leaned against the house throwing up on the front porch. A walking in story from a party I was at when we were all about 17-18. A couple of hours in, everyone had turned up except one of the birthday girl's best friends. She eventually calls and says she's out at a club and can she bring the guy she's met, whose name is apparently Sketch. Half an hour later they turn up, pretty drunk. After about 15 minutes, we realize they have vanished upstairs. Birthday girl doesn't really want them fooling around in her bedroom, but no one wants to walk in on them either. So we send the drunkest guy up to call them down. He toddles off upstairs and then about a minute later comes back into the living room looking pale and distraught. He sits down. We ask what happened. I went up and opened the door, and he was going down on her, and then he looked over at me, and I think he was a vampire. There was blood all over his mouth. So I left. Turned out they'd started fooling around. It became clear it was her time of the month, but Sketch decided to power on through. We accidentally sent up the one person who, in a drunken haze, was not mentally equipped to deal with this at all. He looked broken for the rest of the night. I used to know a guy named Sketch. This also sounds like something he would do, so I choose to believe it was him. Glad to hear he's doing well for himself. I worked for a university and one of the services my department offered was distance learning. We had a room that had cameras and microphones in it that was all remotely controlled from our office downstairs. One afternoon 2 students decided to come in and have some fun on the desks. Of course, none of us are paying attention to the system, since no classes were scheduled at that time, until we heard loud moaning playing over the speakers. I, being the butthole that I am, wanted to say something over the loudspeakers in the classroom like she likes it when you pull her hair, but my boss wasn't down for it, so we simply turned off the system and let them finish hair. I used to be a resident assistant. I was doing room inspections with my partner R. I had given all my residents over a week notice, taped a letter to their door alerting them that I would be coming around. Everything was going fine until we got to room 312. I still remember the room number to this day. We knocked on the door 3 times with no answer. I announced that I was keying into the dorm. We get inside. Everything's normal. I go to the individual bedrooms and knock 3 times again. As soon as I announce I'm keying in, my resident opens the door in just gym shorts. "Hey, what's up, you Livy Legacy? Just doing our scheduled room checks." "Oh, okay. Come on in," without even hesitating or giving me a warning on what I was about to walk into. As he opens the door, I see a naked man dart across the room and into the bathroom. I didn't know he was gay, so that was surprising. But then as I walk into the room and look to my left, I see a tiny Asian man was standing in the corner with a laptop in front of him. He was only wearing a cheetah print thong. I quickly avert my eyes and look to my right and I see a camera on a tripod. I dart out of there immediately yelling, "You passed. Have a nice day." They could have had kilos of coke in the corner, I wouldn't have cared. TLDR. I'm probably in a porno online titled "Ra Interrupts Gay Threesome." What happens next you won't believe. Didn't really walk in, but the most traumatizing time. When I was 6, I had friends over for a play date and I went to go hide underneath my grandparents' bed with my friend. My grandparents came into the room after us, so they had no idea we were in there, so they started undressing and went on the bed. Sounds started. I started crying, but they were basically deaf so they couldn't hear me. But my mom walked by the room and thought she heard me crying, so she walks in. Grandparents start screaming at my mom. Mom starts screaming at grandparents. I run out from under the bed with my friend trailing behind me. It was awful. A memory to be treasured. Another not walked in, but my parents divorced when I was a baby. I ended up living with my dad and got very sporadic visits from my mom in my hometown or hers. I lived half the country away from her. One summer, in the first few days of a visit to her town, I thought I was alone in the house. I was 15. My siblings were several years younger than me and out playing with their friends. And my stepdad and mom, I thought, were at work. It's hot outside and my stepdad is a tightwad, so there was no AC in the house. I decided I was going to go upstairs and soak in a cool bath for a bit. Since I think I'm alone, I start shedding clothes as I'm going upstairs, instead of waiting to get into the bathroom. As soon as I reach the top of the stairs, my mom jumps out, wearing nothing but a lacy thong, and yells, "Surprise!" Turns out, my stepdad was supposed to be home early that day, and since I had only been there a couple of days, she assumed the heavy footsteps coming up the stairs were his. So there was a very surprised, almost naked 15-year-old looking at a very surprised naked 32-year-old, who also happened to be his mom. We talked about it one time several weeks later just so she could explain, and it hasn't been mentioned since. I opened my front door and found my former roommate pounding one out on the couch. The door is positioned in a manner that he couldn't see me, but I could see the TV. He was fapping to Triceratops, just some lady with 3 breasts. I backed out of the room slowly and gently closed the door so he wouldn't see me. I didn't want to disturb him. I was oddly proud. He was the son of a Baptist preacher and had sort of escaped repressive parents in college. So he basically goes from zero exposure to anything sexual to full-on weirdo. Fap well, my sweet prince. Used to walk into my buddy's house without knocking. Walked in on his mum and dad going at it big style in the front room at 2 PM on a Tuesday. Big style, Jesus Christ. I walked into my best friend's house as he was about to kill himself with a rifle. I came in unannounced to grab something and he was sitting in a chair, face bright red, wiping tears off his face. I looked at him and a few feet away leaning against a couch was his rifle. I looked at him, the rifle, and he stares at the floor. He's been going through a really crappy breakup with custody problems and a psycho ex ruining his life. I asked if he was gonna be okay. He just kinda stared away and says, yeah, I think so. Yeah, that was 15 years ago and he is okay and we are still good friends. No, that was probably the best time to walk in. Could have gone a whole different way if he didn't have a friend there right then. In our university's music school, there are several organ practice rooms. As an instructor, I had the keys and was checking to see that the blowers were turned off before leaving. When I opened the door, I heard human sounds coming from behind the organ console, but couldn't see exactly who it was. I took a quick peek and knew immediately that it was one of my organ students and someone he obviously was into. I spared them any embarrassment by tiptoeing out of the room discreetly and locking the door quietly behind me. As far as I could tell, they never knew I saw them, and I didn't comment at our next organ lesson, waiting to see if he ever noticed my presence. Sounds like someone was getting some organ practice of his own. Not me, but my friend in the military. I was with a Marine infantry unit on a MU, which in layman's terms is just all hitching a ride on a Navy ship and doing deployment ops training for 9 months. It's super cramped. All the racks, beds, are 3-5 feet away from one another, enclosed except for one side to get in out of, that can be covered with a sort of curtain thing you pull back from your feet end of the bed for privacy. They are stacked to the ceiling and mine was the highest up, about head level for 5 feet 8 me. Being a 21-year-old male that just broke up with his fiancée, there was obviously a need to release sexual tension. Everybody's got needs, lol. Inaho. Timing was everything due to the enclosed space of 45 plus people, and during a particularly quiet night on ship around 3 AM I wake up to take a pee and get back to my rack. I decide this is prime time to go on a date with Miss Michigan. I whip out my phone and proceed to peruse the all archives. Yes, finally this was it. Been waiting like 3 days for this precise moment. I'm just about to finish satisfying myself and suddenly swoosh. My friend had ripped the curtain back to about waist distance and goes, yo, doc, let's go smoke. Smoke deck is empty at night so it's way nicer. Just 3 seconds ago I was finishing doing the deed and suddenly my face is within a foot of his, staring into his eyes, and I am required to respond. I tell him, sure dude. Give me a sec. Myself being relieved he didn't pull the curtain back any farther than he did. He starts slowly and awkwardly pulling the curtain back to its original position to be funny. I get dressed and hop out of my rack, thinking that I got off the hitch. We smoke and talk about normal stupid deployed and bored subjects. We head back down to the berthing, but something is wrong. He stops and turns to me. I see his wide-eyed face, obvious to me that he only now realized what he had done. Oh my god, you were jacking off. I'm so sorry, and I just say yup. We had a laugh about it and after some jokes about him not being invited to the occasion we head back to our racks. He seemed more embarrassed that he had not picked up on it for 15 minutes that he did actually interrupting me. The hilarious pitiful face he made during realization is still burned into my memory. Not walking in on someone technically, but here goes. A big group of my friends and I went camping in the summer, and it's been a tradition for a few years now. Right when we got there, noon on a Friday, people were getting the campsite set up and we were gonna meet up and start playing beer darts or something along those lines. We all started heading over to where the chairs were set up, and I heard that unmistakable sound of balls smacking butt straight out of a porno on my walk past their tent. Well, soon everybody heard it and started cheering them on. To their credit, they didn't stop, which made the joke of the weekend be when they were gonna break into the pee business. 2nd grade. Bathrooms without locks. Walked in on a girl on the toilet. She screamed. I screamed. Never forget. I was 12, at a sleepover with a good friend of mine. It was around mid-afternoon. I was getting myself some water when I come back to see my friend getting lectured about how messy his room was. It was immaculate, and how he should take responsibility for things. He did. His dad is pulling up carpet fuzz and yelling at him for it. My friend is crying. I kinda pretended that I didn't walk in on that, and hung out in the kitchen reading cereal box ingredients. As soon as the dad walks out, his girlfriend comes in through the door in tears. She had totaled her Corvette running a red light, and now the boyfriend was hysterical, yelling at her and us. They go to their room and there's this banging and fighting noise. Then everything was normal. Took me freaking forever to realize they were addicted to C. What a wild ride. My parents having sex in the bathtub. I imagine this inspired your username. 8 years old, almost 9. It was my birthday in a week and I was all hyped up because I thought we were going to go out for pizza later that day. In those days, it was a big deal. WTF was $5 pizza? This was 1987 and Round Table Pizza was better than God. Inaho, strolled right into my parents' room. My mom and dad, butt naked on the bed in the middle of making the beast with 2 backs. Except, not 2 backs. 3. One of mom's friends striding mid-step into the master bath like ninja fast. Mom's on the bed, straddling, and oh god what a matted mess. Dad right behind her, also straddling. Lock eyes with mom, and in a valiant attempt to defuse whatever shock I was in, decides she's gonna play it cool. She leans forward, drops a fairly epic sized double-ended dildo, grabs my dad's feet, picks them up and starts singing row, row, row your boat. Obviously, I screamed like a banshee and ran for my life. Almost 40, still can't go camping without flashbacks. That is horrific. Your mum only made crap worse. I was about 17 or 18 years old. I had a close friend that I would always hang out with at his house. His parents were awesome and basically knew myself and some other friends would not get into any trouble and just play video games all day, so they never minded when we came over. It was an everyday occurrence, and a habit to just show up unannounced since he always said we didn't have to ask about coming over. Just show up. This friend had a girlfriend that we were all pretty cool with too, since she'd come over too and hang out with us. Call us nerds jokingly and all that good stuff. Of course, we knew she'd spend the night there too, so after a certain time, we'd all leave our friend and his GF to do their thing. On Saturday afternoon, I was free and grabbed one of my other friends to drop by my buddy's house. The usual hey, we got munchies, let's play some Halo till we decide we've had enough plan. Get to the door. Father opens, we exchange greetings and mosey on in. I'm first in so I make my way to my friend's room. The door is never really closed and if it ever was, it had unlocked because, you know, anyone could just drop by. We'd just be watching Naruto or playing some Soul Calibur and the like. I opened the door to find my friend pile driving his GF. Like, really breaking some solid concrete. If you don't know what the pile driver looks like, please do a quick search and see for yourself. Here I am, in the doorway, bag of Cheetos dropping to the ground and getting a second or two of my bud smashing his GF, whose legs are just out over her head. They both look at me standing there. We're all surprised. I do the most logical thing. I start closing the door and as I am doing so, I hear my friend say 5 minutes. I turn on my heels and go back the way I came. My other friend walking to the room now. I turn him around as well and say he's busy with, insert GF's name here, and push him back towards the front door. I inform the father that we'll be back because we forgot drinks. I make sure we don't come back for at least another 20. Later on in life, It became a running joke that everyone has walked in on this guy and his GF. I am pretty sure no one has seen what I have though. It's still something we joke about today. I can tell you the worst time I got walked in on. At my last job, I was teasing my receptionist about walking around barefoot at work. She was cute as heck and took the teasing well in strides. One day, we were unpacking a few delivery boxes in the back, and we thought we were alone. She then sits on one of the boxes and props her feet up on others and pretends to ignore me, all the while purposefully giving me a full view up her skirt and flexing her toes back and forth at me. I stare for what seemed like forever, and she just slides her foot up her leg. I then lick my finger and place it on her toe and make a sizzling sound, to which she giggles and proceeds to suck her own finger and slide it between her toes. At this point I'm floored and try to hide the front of my pants, but not really because I wanted her to see my erection. At which time, the manager walks in the room, stutter steps at the scene, stops, quickly turns around, and disappears into his office for the rest of the day. The manager is a cool dude. I walked in my friend's house to see if she was ready to go with me to get my first tattoo. I go to her bedroom and what do I see? Her face plastered in her girlfriend's poon, both naked. I noped out of there real fast. They thought it was funny. I just wanted to go get my tattoo and never speak of it again. All the things she said. All the things she said. I walked in on my mom watching the Anal Princess Vol 2 tape she had confiscated from me the day before. I'm so sorry and not at the same time. That's hilarious. I was madly in love. I got off work a bit early, picked up fish and chips for my amazing fiancée, who just a month before had said yes to my proposal. Unfortunately, when I got home, earlier than she expected, I literally walked in on her fricking some dude, both butt naked going at it like the end of the world, and yet, we hadn't had sex in months because she hadn't been feeling well. Some guy I'd never seen before, in my freaking apartment, on my freaking bed, with my freaking woman. They didn't even hear me come in the apartment, lol. In hindsight, I'm glad I found out before we got married, but it still really fricked me up. I wanna say I did something awesome like beat the guy up or whatever, but I just waited, took a good 30 seconds, for her to notice me and then walked out. It was that, or murder the freaking pair of them right then and there. Sometimes I wish I had done just that, but only sometimes. Awkward. When I was a young boy, 5 or 6 maybe, I remember going into my parents' room at night to hop in bed with them and my father being completely naked when I just ran in and hopped in bed. My mom thought it was the funniest thing ever and I can remember my dad being in a bad mood the entire time I laid there until, very quickly, he got me out of the room and back into mine. I remember her asking why is daddy naked and my mom said oh, he is just going to take a bath now. 1. My dad didn't take baths. 2. I only realized about 20 years later that I most likely just walked in on my parents about to get it on and my dad was in a bad mood because frick this kid, right? My stepsister and I were both 15, and I'm a guy. I used to borrow her hairdryer in the mornings. Knock, get the okay, enter and retrieve hairdryer. So one morning I knock, and she says don't come in. Well, she was a pretty soft-spoken girl, and I only heard the latter 66%. In I go, and there's her, naked from the waist down, quickly sitting on the bed with her panties clutched in her lap. I quickly apologized and got the heck out. So, sorry about that, stepsister. If you'd only said hang on, or 1 second, I promise it never would have happened. The day I saw the 2 biggest dongs I've ever seen. I was the foreman working for a construction company years ago and we were remodeling a Holiday Inn. Each morning I would get the list of rooms that were supposed to be empty for the day so we could go in and do our thing. The hotel gave me a master key so I could open the doors without having to get the manager. I got my crew started on the first room and I was going through the list and knocking, entering each room and blocking the doors open so my crew could move on to the next room without having to get me to open the doors. I got to the 2nd floor and knocked on a door. Didn't hear anything and nobody opened the door so I slid a key and opened the door. I walked in and there were 2 of the largest naked African American guys I've ever seen standing at the end of the bed and a girl laying on the bed naked masturbating. There was also a camera and umbrella light off to a corner. It took me a second to realize what I was looking at. As I was coming to the realization that I walked in on some kind of a pee shoot, one of the guys turned toward me said, "Come on in, man. You wanna hit this?" I must have looked like a deer in the headlights to them because when he turned toward me I saw literally the biggest dong I've ever seen. I've been in locker rooms at gyms so you see dongs from time to time, but this thing was from another world. It looked angry and it scared me. It was easily a foot long. So as I'm standing there trying to figure out if that thing is real, the other guy starts walking over toward me and his buddy, and there it is. Another massive dong. These dongs could have been twins. They were as big as my 26-year-old arm. All I could do was say, "I'm sorry," and back up to leave the room. I got out of the room, shut the door and started to walk down the hallway. One of my crew was coming down the hallway toward me and I started to tell him what I just saw, but the door opened behind me and one of the guys just walked out into the hallway totally naked saying, "Come on back, man. You can't hit this. She'll suck your dong." I just told him I had to go, motioned to my buddy to turn around, and we went back to the first floor. He saw the guy's dong in the hallway too and had the same look on his face that I did. I didn't speak Spanish at that point so I couldn't understand what my crew was saying the rest of the day, but I knew what they were talking about because they kept putting their arm out like it was a dong and saying "grand." From that point on, that guy in the hallway was known as the elephant trunk guy. TLDR. I was working construction remodeling a hotel and walked in on two black guys with massive dongs fricking a girl on camera in a hotel room. I used to sleep at my cousin's house all the time. I was raised by my mother and she's a nurse, so I spent many nights there. One night when I was 12 I was at his house. It was just us and his 3 younger siblings. When I stayed there I crashed in his room. So, around 9 PM I say I'm going in the shower. His shower used to take a long time for the water to become hot. So I turned the water on and went into the living room with my towel on and watched Who Wants to Be a Millionaire for about 10 minutes. Then I hear a bunch of crap falling in my cousin's room, so I walk towards it. I open the door and there's my cousin, completely naked with a dish towel wrapped around his erect dong, and he's knocking everything down in the room with his dong. I'm talking sports figurines, a lot of books, VHS tapes, video games, basically anything you could think of that would be in a 13-year-old's room. So I say, "What the frick?" cause he just looked at me calmly and said, "I thought you were in the shower. I was going to clean it up. I always do." And never mentioned it again. I was going to clean it up. I always do. At least he's a stand-up guy about his dong swinging. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.